So, picture this. You are standing in your kitchen.
Okay, if I'm there.
You've just worked a brutal 50-hour week, your back aches, and you are desperately looking forward to doing absolutely nothing.
Sounds amazing, honestly.
Right. And then your phone buzzes. It's your mother or maybe your partner or like a really close friend.
The dreaded buzz.
Exactly. You politely tell them you can't make it to Sunday dinner because you are just utterly exhausted and need to sleep. And then you hear it,
Let me guess. The pause.
the pause, and then the heavy sigh. And the phrase, "Oh, well, I guess I'll just eat the roast by myself again. Don't worry about me."
Oh, wow. Ouch.
In a span of like 3 seconds, your heart rate spikes, your stomach completely drops, your perfectly sound logic just evaporates, and suddenly you are looking for your car keys.
Because you feel terrible.
Yes, but why? Like, what just happened in your brain? You knew your boundary was reasonable.
Right.
You knew you had every right to say no.
But you do it anyway.
You completely abandon your own needs to go sit at a dinner table, feeling exhausted, resentful, and utterly confused about how you just got outmaneuvered.
It is a universally recognizable and universally uncomfortable phenomenon.
It really is.
You enter an interaction with a sturdy wall of logic, a really clear sense of your own capacity, and somehow, within a fraction of a second, that wall is bypassed entirely.
It feels like magic. Or like a curse.
It does feel like magic, but it is actually a highly specific, highly predictable neurological hack.
And untangling that hack is exactly what we are getting into today. So welcome to the deep dive.
Glad to be here.
Our mission for this session is to dissect the hidden science of guilt tripping. We're going to uncover what this tactic really is on a biological and, psychological level.
Which is so important because people internalize it so much.
They do. And I know what you might be thinking right now. You're probably thinking, but what if I actually did do something selfish? What if I am just a bad friend or a bad daughter?
Which is exactly what the guilt trip wants you to think.
Right. So I want to validate right out of the gate for you. When you cave in those moments, it is not just you being too nice or having a weak spine.
Not at all.
It is a fundamental exploitation of your brain's pro-social wiring. We are going to look at how it rewires your decision-making in real time.
And why the smartest among us are often the most incredibly vulnerable to it.
Yes. And most importantly, how you can protect your boundaries without feeling like a terrible person.
That internal friction you just mentioned, that fear that maybe you're just being selfish, that is the very engine that makes guilt tripping work.
It's the fuel for the fire.
Exactly. It's a crucial distinction to make early on. We often confuse guilt tripping with standard, relationship conflict.
Sure.
But they're entirely different animals. They operate on completely different psychological hardware.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if we look at the psychological consensus here, the true definition of guilt tripping completely shifts how you look at those uncomfortable kitchen counter conversations.
It does. It changes the whole paradigm.
It's not just a miscommunication, is it?
No, not at all. The primary distinction here is intent. In clinical psychology, guilt tripping is firmly categorized as a form of emotional manipulation.
Manipulation. That's a strong word.
It is, but it fits. It utilizes blame, it leverages disappointment, and it applies immense emotional pressure. But the ultimate goal is incredibly specific.
Okay, what is the goal?
Well, if we look at a normal, healthy conversation about hurt feelings, it sounds something like, "You hurt me, can we talk so I can understand your perspective?"
Which is totally reasonable.
Right, because that is a dialogue aimed at mutual understanding. Guilt tripping, on the other hand, operates on a completely different premise.
Like what? What's the unspoken translation?
The unspoken translation is always, "You hurt me, so now you owe me."
Oh, wow, now you owe me.
Exactly. The goal is not understanding.
Yeah.
The goal is pure compliance.
Compliance. It's not about resolving the underlying issue at all. It's literally just about getting you to physically do the thing they want you to do, whether that's driving to dinner, lending them money, or just backing down from an argument.
Precisely. It basically operates as a form of emotional blackmail light.
Emotional blackmail light. That is a terrifying phrase.
It is, and it is a highly effective, incredibly insidious tactic because it weaponizes your own capacity for empathy instead of using, direct aggressive threats.
Right, because if someone directly threatens you, you know how to react.
Exactly. Think about it. A direct threat like, "Do this or I will scream at you," or "Do this or I will end this relationship," is obvious.
Yeah, your guard immediately goes up.
Right. It triggers your amygdala's fight or flight response. You can see the threat coming. Your defenses go up. But guilt tripping bypasses that entirely.
How does it sneak past the guard?
It sears your behavior by making you feel like you must fix their internal emotional state in order to retain your own status as a good person.
Oh man, that is so sneaky.
And the guilt they place on you is almost always wildly disproportionate to whatever action you actually took.
Emotional blackmail light. That phrase is just chilling to me because it implies that the person doing it doesn't need to hold a literal weapon to your head.
No, they just have to threaten your internal sense of identity.
Right. They threaten your perception of being a good friend or a good son or a loyal employee.
Which to the human brain is a massive threat.
Totally. But to really understand how this weapon is forged, we have to look at the raw materials. We have to understand what the brain actually thinks it is doing when it feels guilt.
Yes, the baseline biology.
Because we can't understand the manipulation of a system without understanding the original hardware first, right?
That is the foundation of this entire discussion. To understand the hack, you must understand the baseline functioning of the system.
So what is guilt, really?
Well, guilt, in its natural, unmanipulated state, is not a character flaw. It is a highly sophisticated evolutionary feature of the human brain.
Really, an evolutionary feature?
Yes. If we dive into evolutionary anthropology, guilt is defined as a social emotion.
Hold on, a social emotion. What does that actually mean in practice?
What do you mean?
Because when I feel guilty, it feels incredibly isolating and internal, like a rock in my stomach. It doesn't feel very social at all.
I get that. It feels internal, but its entire evolutionary purpose is external. A social emotion means it evolved specifically to navigate and preserve our relationships with other humans.
Okay, tracking so far.
It is a biological alarm system that triggers when we believe we have harmed someone else in our group, or when we have broken our internalized moral code.
Okay, so it's an alarm.
Right. And to understand the intensity of it, you have to think about early human survival. We evolved in small hunter-gatherer tribes.
Like back on the savannah.
Exactly. In that environment, your survival was entirely dependent on the group. If you harmed a tribe member, if you stole food, if you alienated the people around you,
You'd get kicked out.
you risked being ostracized. And historically, being kicked out of the tribe meant certain death. You would freeze or starve.
Wow, so the stakes were literally life or death.
Exactly.
Huh.
So the brain developed this highly uncomfortable, visceral feeling guilt to ensure you wouldn't just shrug off the harm you caused.
It makes sense. If it didn't hurt, you wouldn't care.
Right. It is biologically designed to feel terrible so that it forces reparative behavior.
So it's literally a survival mechanism. The brain is saying, fix this social rupture immediately, or we are going to die alone on the savannah.
Yes.
That explains why the physical sensation of guilt is so heavy in the chest, so nauseating. The brain is treating a social threat like a physical threat.
Neuroscience actually backs this up beautifully, by the way.
Oh, really? How so?
When you experience social pain like rejection or intense guilt, it activates the anterior cingulate cortex in the brain.
Okay, big words. What does that part of the brain do?
Well, that is the exact same brain region that lights up when you experience physical pain.
Wait, really? The exact same region?
The exact same one. Your brain does not clearly distinguish between a broken arm and a broken social bond. It treats both as absolute emergencies.
That is mind-blowing. No wonder it feels so awful.
And when you feel genuine guilt, it changes how your brain processes decisions in a very predictable way.
How does it change things?
Research shows that under the influence of guilt, people become significantly more risk-averse.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and they also become remarkably more willing to give up their own resources, their time, their physical energy, their money, all to repair the relationship they believe they have damaged.
Okay, there's a concept from the research sources that uses a phrase I found absolutely fascinating for this. They called it targeted generosity.
Yes, targeted generosity. It's a key concept.
It suggests that guilt prompts targeted generosity toward the specific person we think we hurt, especially when they can see the gesture.
Right, the visibility is key.
It's like your brain goes into overdrive to prove to that specific person, look how much I care. I'm fixing it. Please don't kick me out of the tribe.
That is exactly what happens. It is a laser-focused behavioral shift. When you feel guilty, your prefrontal cortex, your logical planning center, is essentially hijacked by a very clear primal agenda.
Okay, what's the agenda?
First, avoid any further conflict at all costs. Second, sacrifice your own comfort or resources to make things right.
Give up the money, give up the time.
Exactly. And third, focus almost obsessively on fixing the rupture in the relationship.
And honestly, that system sounds fundamentally good. Like,
Yep.
it is the glue of human connection.
It is. It works beautifully when you have actually done something wrong,
Yeah.
like accidentally breaking a friend's prized possession or forgetting a deeply important anniversary.
I love thinking about healthy guilt like a check engine light for your relationships,
That's a great analogy.
You're driving along, you say something deeply insensitive to your partner, and the check engine light of guilt flashes bright red on the dashboard of your brain.
Warning you of the damage.
Right. And it tells you, hey, pull over, you need to fix this before the engine blows up. It's a crucial, necessary warning system.
Without it, relationships would just fall apart.
But here's the critical question I have for now. If guilt is this incredibly refined evolutionary tool,
Which it is.
if it is so inherently good and pro-social and vital for our survival, how does our incredibly smart human brain fail to recognize when that check engine light is being triggered artificially?
The million-dollar question.
Like, why can't we instantly tell the difference between real guilt and a fake alarm?
Because the evolutionary drive to maintain social harmony is simply too powerful.
It just overrides logic.
Completely. The brain's biological imperative to avoid conflict and a sacrifice for the sake of the tribe is wired so deeply, and it operates so fast that it entirely bypasses our higher logical reasoning.
So logic doesn't even stand a chance.
Not initially. The brain feels the physical discomfort of the alarm, the cortisol flooding your system, the tight chest, the nausea.
That awful sinking feeling.
Right. And its immediate knee-jerk reaction is turn the alarm off by fixing the problem. It doesn't pause to run a logical diagnostic on whether the alarm is even legitimate.
So the emotional and physical discomfort is just so profound that the brain genuinely struggles to distinguish between an internal moral failing through guilt and a manually triggered alarm coming from an outside source.
Exactly. The alarm feels real, so the brain treats it as real.
A manually triggered alarm. That is such a vivid way to picture it. Which brings us right into the mechanics of the hijack itself.
The fun part.
We've established the original hardware. We know why the check engine light exists. Now we need to look at how someone else reaches their hand under your mental dashboard and presses that button for their own benefit.
How they manually trigger the alarm.
Exactly. So what is the psychological mechanism here? How do they do it?
It's fascinating, really. Guilt tripping is basically the active installation of guilt from the outside when you haven't actually done anything wrong.
Or at least not anything proportional to their reaction.
Right, exactly. The manipulator acts as a mirror, but a funhouse mirror.
A funhouse mirror. I like that.
They reflect back an image of you that makes you feel, quote, more guilty than is merited.
They distort your perception of yourself.
Yes. And they do this specifically so that your brain's natural response, that targeted generosity, that desperation to repair the bond, forces you to comply with whatever demand they have.
It's so insidious because it doesn't look like an attack. It looks like a wound.
Which is why our empathy betrays us.
And the research outlines 4 main pillars, 4 specific moves that make up the anatomy of a guilt trip.
The classic playbook.
If you are listening to this, I guarantee you will recognize every single one of these. Let's really look at them because they are incredibly common. The first move is blame and character attacks.
A very common starting point.
The examples we see in the sources are things like, you're so selfish, or a good daughter or a good partner or a good friend would never treat me this way.
Notice the linguistic structure of those phrases.
The good daughter part.
Yes. It is not addressing the specific action. It is entirely addressing the core identity of the person. It's an attack on your character.
Oh, I see.
They are not saying, I am disappointed you cannot attend dinner. They are saying, your inability to attend dinner is proof that you are fundamentally flawed.
That is such a crucial leap. It takes a logistical disagreement like, I'm tired, and turns it into a trial about your core morality.
It instantly raises the stakes.
Okay, the second move is reminding you of past favors. Oh, this one is so heavy.
The debt collection.
Exactly. The quotes are like, after everything I've done for you, or if it wasn't for me, you wouldn't have gotten through college. You owe me this.
This tactic specifically weaponizes the concept of social reciprocity.
Meaning the natural give and take in a relationship.
Right. In healthy relationships, reciprocity is a natural, uncalculated flow of mutual care. You do things for each other because you want to.
But the guilt tripper changes that.
Completely. They take normal, supposedly loving support from the past and retroactively turn it into a transactional debt.
That is so gross.
A debt that, conveniently, can be called in at any moment to force compliance. It implies that their past love was not a gift, but a loan with exorbitant emotional interest rates.
The retroactive transaction. It feels so inherently icky when it happens. You suddenly realize that the nice thing they did for you 5 years ago had invisible strings attached the whole time.
Which shatters your trust, naturally.
Okay, the third move is playing the martyr. The quotes here are agonizingly familiar. Don't worry about me, I'm used to being alone, or I'll just suffer as usual, you go have fun.
The martyr tactic is arguably the most sophisticated of the four,
Really? Why is that?
because it completely removes any direct demand. They aren't explicitly asking you to change your plans.
They're just complaining.
They are simply presenting a highly curated, pathetic picture of their own manufactured suffering. They set the stage, and then they allow your own healthy empathy to do the heavy lifting of changing your mind.
So they don't even have to ask. They make you defeat yourself.
Exactly. It's brilliant in a very dark way.
And finally, the fourth move. Emotional theatrics. This one doesn't even require words sometimes.
The nonverbal guilt trip.
Right. It's the heavy dramatic sighs, the sad, downcast, wounded puppy faces, or that incredibly loaded passive-aggressive, it's fine.
Oh, it's fine.
When the tone, the body language, and the eye contact make it abundantly clear that it is the exact opposite of fine.
We've all been on the receiving end of that fine.
Mm.
What unites all four of these moves, the character attacks, the weaponized past favors, the martyrdom, the silent theatrics, is the underlying psychological strategy.
Okay, what's the thread connecting them?
There is a hidden message beneath all of them. The unspoken translation is always, I feel bad, so you must be bad unless you fix it.
I feel bad, so you must be bad unless you fix it.
That is the core of the psychological trap. The brilliance and, frankly, the danger of this trap is that it forces you to take total responsibility for an emotion you did not actually cause.
Let me stop you right there because I want to make sure I'm really absorbing this.
Okay.
They offload their own negative emotion, whether that is their own boredom, their insecurity, their disappointment. They package it up and they place it squarely on your shoulders,
Yes.
making your innate goodness contingent on solving their internal feeling.
Precisely. They are incapable of or unwilling to self-soothe. So they outsource their emotional regulation to you, using guilt as the cattle prod to keep you in line.
That is so wild. They're making you do the emotional labor they refuse to do.
Exactly. And knowing these four moves is essential. You have to be able to identify the tactics on the board.
Right.
But recognizing the moves in a sterile environment, like listening to a deep dive, is very different from understanding why they completely paralyze us in the actual moment they're happening.
Because I can sit here right now in the safety of the studio and think, oh, if someone gives me a heavy sigh and says, I'll just suffer, I'll just roll my eyes and walk away.
It's easy to say now.
But in the moment when you are standing in that kitchen and it's someone you deeply care about, it doesn't feel empowering. It feels completely paralyzing.
It's deer in the headlights.
Why does my brain just shut down? And this brings us to a concept from clinical social worker Susan Forward.
A pioneer in this specific area.
Yes, she popularized the term emotional blackmail and created an acronym to describe the exact state of mind this puts you in. The acronym is FOG.
Fear, obligation, guilt.
Right, FOG, fear, obligation, guilt.
Susan Forward's FOG model is fundamental to dissecting this dynamic. Emotional blackmail as a broad category uses all three levers to control others.
How do they differ?
Fear is often used in more overtly abusive dynamics: fear of rage, fear of physical harm, fear of abandonment.
Okay, that's the more aggressive stuff.
Right. But in the specific nuanced context of guilt tripping, the primary drivers are the O and the G, obligation and guilt.
So how do obligation and guilt work together in tandem to just lock up my brain?
They attack your psyche from two completely different temporal angles.
Temporal angles, like time.
Yes. Obligation leverages the past. It relies on the shared history between you and the other person, establishing a narrative of, I sacrificed for you previously, therefore you owe me unquestioning compliance right now.
So that's the past debt.
Exactly. Guilt, on the other hand, attacks your current identity and your future self-worth.
How does it attack the future?
It relies on the narrative of, if you were truly a good person, a loving person, you wouldn't be saying no to me in this moment, and you won't in the future.
Wow.
Together, the past debt and the future threat create a literal vice grip on your immediate decision-making process in the present.
But the acronym FOG isn't just a clever memory device for fear, obligation, and guilt.
No, it's very literal.
Right. I found this incredibly revealing. The literal translation of fog is actually how victims describe the physiological and cognitive experience.
He used that exact word.
When you are being guilt-tripped, you report feeling confused, foggy, unable to think clearly. It's like you're in a literal cognitive fog.
You lose your bearings.
On some deep, intuitive level, that something is incredibly unfair. But you can't see the edges of it. You can't articulate the unfairness in the moment. Your brain just stutters. Why does my brain produce literal brain fog?
Because your prefrontal cortex is being overwhelmed by cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance. Break that down for me.
When you are hit with intense, unexpected guilt, coupled with the pressure of obligation from someone you love, your cognitive load spikes astronomically. Your brain is trying to process contradictory data.
Contradictory data like what?
On one hand, your brain says, I evaluated my schedule, I'm exhausted, my boundary to stay home was logical and necessary.
The logic track.
Right. But on the other hand, this person I love is telling me I'm causing them immense pain, and my biological wiring tells me that causing pain to the tribe means I am a bad person in danger of being cast out.
And those two things can't both be true.
Exactly. The human brain cannot easily hold those two conflicting realities at the same time. The amygdala starts sounding the alarm, cortisol floods your system, and the higher-order reasoning required to debate the logic is effectively shut down.
So what does the brain do when it's stuck in that fog, when the alarm is blaring and it just can't think straight?
It seeks the fastest possible route to clarity and relief. The human brain hates cognitive dissonance, and it absolutely loathes the physical discomfort of the guilt alarm.
It just wants it to stop.
Yes. When trapped in that fog, the fastest, most biologically efficient way to make the alarm stop ringing, to lower the cortisol, and to make the fog clear is simply to give the manipulator what they want.
You give in?
You give in, not because you logically agree with them, not because you suddenly have the energy to go to dinner, but because the psychological pressure of the fog is too much to bear.
You are essentially paying a ransom to get your peace of mind back.
Paying a ransom to get your peace of mind back. That hits the nail on the head.
You say yes just to make the heavy sighing stop, just to make the knot in your stomach go away.
Which reinforces their behavior for next time, sadly.
Right. But knowing the mechanics of this fog, knowing the neuroscience, is only half the battle. To help you, the listener, spot this in your own life, we need to look at how this actually sounds in the wild.
We need concrete examples.
Exactly. We need to transition from the laboratory to the real world. The research breaks down 4 specific domains where this happens constantly.
And applying the theory to these real-world contexts is vital, because guilt tripping is a chameleon.
A chameleon.
It morphs to fit the specific contours of the relationship. The underlying mechanism, the manual triggering of the alarm is the same, but the disguise changes depending on who is pulling the lever.
Okay, let's look at the first domain. Relationships. Specifically romantic partnerships.
A very common
A
background.
scenario we often see is incredibly common. You say to your partner, I can't come over tonight. I had a brutal week at work and I really need to rest.
A totally normal, healthy boundary.
The human body requires rest. But the partner answers, I guess your job is more important than our relationship. Don't worry, I'll just get used to being alone.
Oof.
Right? Let's analyze the psychological substitution happening here.
Well, in a healthy dynamic, the partner would express their authentic emotion honestly.
What would that sound like?
They might say, I am really bummed. I was looking forward to seeing you. I miss you. Can we plan to spend all day tomorrow together?
That is vulnerable and honest, and it doesn't make me feel like a monster for being tired.
Exactly. But in the guilt-tripping dynamic, that honest expression is replaced by weaponization. They take your reasonable physiological need for rest and instantly frame it as a referendum on your commitment to the entire relationship.
They inflate the stakes artificially.
Massively inflate them.
It's that massive leap in logic. I need sleep becomes you don't love me. It's completely irrational, but because it threatens the bond, it hits you right in the gut.
And the fog rolls in.
Okay, domain number 2. Friendships. You say to a friend, I can't help you move this weekend. I have my own family commitments. And they reply, wow, if you asked me, I would have done it for you.
Oh, the hypothetical martyr.
Yes. Talk to me about this one.
This is a classic, highly manipulative deployment of the obligation tactic we discussed earlier, mixed with a hypothetical martyrdom.
How is it hypothetical?
They are creating a completely fictional scenario, what they claim they would have done in a reverse situation, and using that fiction to make your actual real-world boundary seem like a moral failure.
So they're comparing real life to a fantasy.
Yes. They are punishing you for not living up to a standard that exists only in their imagination.
And it works so incredibly well. You immediately start questioning yourself. You think, oh man, would they have done it for me? Am I a terrible friend? Am I being selfish?
You're arguing against a
The
ghost.
fog rolls right in.
Yeah.
Now, domain number 3. This is often the most entrenched one. Families.
The deepest roots.
The classic quote is a parent saying, I sacrificed everything for you. I gave up my best years for you. And you can't even do this one simple thing for me.
The psychological weight of this specific phrasing cannot be overstated.
That's so heavy.
When a parent uses the "I sacrificed everything" line, they are implying that the listener's entire existence, their literal life, stands on a debt that they can never, ever finish paying.
It is the ultimate trump card in emotional manipulation.
It really is. It suggests that because the parent provided care, which arguably is the basic fundamental prerequisite of choosing to bring a child into the world, the child now owes a lifetime of unquestioning compliance.
It frames autonomy as betrayal.
Framing autonomy as betrayal, yes. It is an incredibly destructive use of the obligation mechanism.
That is so heavy, and you hear it all the time. It completely bypasses the logic of whatever the one simple thing is that they are asking for.
It doesn't matter what the request is.
Right.
Yeah.
It could be, drive me to the airport at 4 a.m. or give me $10,000, and the setup is exactly the same. You owe me your life.
Which is an impossible debt to clear.
Now, the 4th domain. Work. This one is tricky. The scenario is, a coworker says, must be nice to clock out on time. Some of us are actually committed to this team.
The workplace guilt trip.
You literally just did your job, finished your required hours, and left at the end of your shift. But let me push back here for a second.
Please do.
At work, there's actual survival at stake. If my boss or a senior coworker guilt trips me, it's not just FOG. I could get fired. How does this science apply when there's an actual structural power dynamic involved?
That is a phenomenal question. In the workplace, the guilt trip is often weaponized alongside real structural power, which makes it exponentially harder to fight.
Because the threat is tangible.
Right. But the psychological mechanism remains the same. The coworker or boss is weaponizing a toxic culture. They are feeling stressed, overworked, or mismanaged.
Which is valid, but
instead of directing that frustration upward at management or inward at their own lack of boundaries, they project it laterally onto you.
they pass the buck.
They try to make you feel guilty for not overextending yourself to match their level of dysfunction.
Oh, wow. To match their dysfunction.
Yes. They are using guilt to enforce a shadow policy. The unspoken rule that you must suffer as much as they do to be considered part of the team.
So the fear of losing your job is the structural threat, but the guilt is the emotional enforcement.
Exactly. It's a 1-2 punch.
So looking across these 4 domains, whether it's a romantic partner inflating the stakes, a childhood friend using hypothetical martyrdom, a parent calling in a lifelong debt, or a corporate coworker enforcing toxic dysfunction, the execution is eerily similar.
It's the same playbook.
The phrases literally echo each other across different relationships. Why is this tactic so universal? How does a mid-level manager and a grandmother end up using the exact same playbook?
Because the underlying human biology is the same. The human brain is the human brain, regardless of the social context.
So it's universal hardware, universal hack.
Exactly. The guilt system, that ancient survival-based alarm system, is a universal feature of our species. Therefore, the hack for that system is universally effective.
It reliably, predictably overrides logical assessment across all human contexts.
Manipulators, whether they are doing it consciously with malicious intent or unconsciously out of their own unhealed trauma, gravitate toward the tools that yield the highest rate of compliance.
And nothing yields compliance quite like the suffocating feeling of guilt.
It's the path of least resistance for getting what you want from someone.
Which brings us to what I think is the most crucial and perhaps the most comforting part of this deep dive.
The self-compassion piece.
Yes, we know what it is now. We know the neuroscience of how the fog rolls in. We know where it happens and how it sounds. But the core mystery remains.
Why we still fall for it.
And I know this is what frustrates people the most about themselves. Why are smart, capable, highly logical people like the person listening to this right now so consistently vulnerable to this?
It's maddening, isn't it?
You know it's a trap, yet you step in it anyway. The psychological research breaks down 4 scientific reasons why guilt tripping works so incredibly well, even against our best defenses.
It is absolutely essential to remove the shame from falling for this.
Oh.
As we walk through these 4 reasons, it will become very clear that yielding to a guilt trip is not a sign of weakness.
No. What is it a sign of?
It is a sign that your pro-social wiring is functioning perfectly, but is being ruthlessly exploited.
Exactly. Let's look at the first reason. It hijacks a pro-social emotion. We touched on this with the evolutionary history, but it really bears repeating. It turns our best traits against us.
Yes. Remember that guilt evolved to push people to give more, to risk less, and to focus on fixing perceived harm for the good of the tribe.
So it exploits that drive for repair.
It exploits your fundamental, beautiful desire to be a good, caring, supportive person. It works so well on you because you actually care.
Oh, that's a nice way to look at it.
It's the truth. If you were a sociopath, if you genuinely lacked empathy, a guilt trip would bounce right off of you. You would just blink at them and walk away.
You wouldn't even feel the fog.
Not at all. The vulnerability you feel is a direct byproduct of your empathy.
The vulnerability is a direct byproduct of your empathy. If you are listening to this, I really hope you internalize that. You are not weak. You are being targeted because you care.
It's a feature, not a bug, being used against you.
Okay, the second reason it works so well is that it targets your identity. The psychological distinction here is vital. Guilt tripping rarely says, you did an action I didn't like. It says, you are a bad person if you don't fix this.
This is the fundamental difference between guilt and shame.
Let's break that down. Guilt versus shame.
Guilt says, I did a bad thing. I made a mistake. Shame says, I am a bad person. I am a mistake.
Wow, that's a huge difference.
Guilt trippers inherently try to bypass guilt and induce that deeper, much more destructive shame. They often operate from a place of deep entitlement.
Entitlement. How so?
They see themselves as the perpetual innocent victim in every scenario. Because they view themselves as inherently good and perpetually wronged, they frame every disagreement in a way that forces you to question your fundamental character.
Not just your specific logistical choice in that one moment.
Right. It elevates a disagreement over weekend plans into a Supreme Court trial about your core morality.
It's wildly disproportionate, but it hooks your identity.
Precisely.
Okay, the third scientific reason why this works so well, it literally narrows your thinking.
This goes back to the cognitive fog we discussed, but the cognitive psychology behind it is fascinating.
What happens mechanically in the brain?
Studies on guilt and decision-making show that experiencing intense guilt physically and mentally narrows your field of attention. You can develop cognitive tunnel vision.
Tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Like you literally can't see the big picture.
Your brain becomes entirely fixated on one singular goal.
Yeah.
Making amends and stopping the alarm.
So instead of seeing the whole chessboard, you are just staring at one single pawn.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when you have that tunnel vision, your brain literally drops other critical data points.
It just ignores them.
It doesn't even register them. In that narrowed, high-stress state, you are neurologically less likely to step back and ask logical, broad context questions.
Like, is this request actually fair?
Or, is their reaction proportionate to what I actually did? Or, most importantly, is fixing their emotional state actually my responsibility?
You lose the capacity for that broader context.
Instead, your narrowed, panicked thinking asks only one question. How do I make this terrible feeling in my stomach go away right now?
It's pure emotional survival mode. But the fourth reason, this is the one that really gave me chills when I read through the research.
Ah, the inception effect.
Yes. The fourth reason it works so well is the inception effect. It feels like your idea.
This raises a profoundly important question about the nature of autonomy and free will.
The darkest, most effective part of this manipulation is how seamlessly it blends with your own internal voice.
Because there is no physical threat. No one is holding a gun to your head.
Right, so your brain has to rationalize why you are suddenly surrendering and doing something you didn't want to do.
And how does it rationalize it?
By the time you finally give in and say yes, it rarely feels like they forced me against my will. It feels like I am choosing to do the right thing. I am being the bigger person. I am compromising for the sake of the relationship.
And that is the hallmark of the absolute most successful manipulation. It succeeds best when the target genuinely believes the decision was their own.
It's terrifying.
Guilt tripping uses your own moral compass as the weapon against you. You convince yourself that yielding is an act of love or an act of loyalty rather than an act of coerced compliance.
It masquerades perfectly as your own conscience.
It's a masterclass in psychological disguise.
It's terrifyingly effective, but if guilt tripping feels exactly like our own moral compass, if it creates this inception effect where we think we're just being good people, how on earth can we tell the difference?
We need a diagnostic tool.
Yes, I demand a diagnostic tool here. If the listener is in the thick of it, how can they tell the difference between feeling healthy guilt because they actually messed up and feeling the jaws of a trap closing around them?
We have to establish a very clear differential diagnosis for exactly this purpose. We have to look at the contrasting features of healthy guilt versus manufactured guilt.
Okay, let's lay out the contrasting features side by side. First, healthy guilt. The consensus is that it comes from your own internal values. It fits what actually happened proportionally, and it leads to honest repair, not self-erasure.
Think back to the check engine light analogy. Healthy guilt is an internal sensor. You reflect on your own behavior, compare it to your own deeply held values, and realize you fell short,
Like snapping at a friend because you were tired.
or forgetting a promise you made. The intensity of the guilt matches the severity of the infraction.
Proportionality.
Exactly. And the resolution, the sincere apology or the amends, restores the balance of the relationship without requiring you to completely abandon your own needs, your boundaries, or your self-respect.
It leads to repair, not self-erasure. That is a vital distinction. Now, let's contrast that with guilt-trip guilt.
The manual alarm.
Right. The research indicates this comes from outside pressure, not internal values. It is vastly bigger than what you actually did. And crucially, it only goes away when you violate your own boundaries to please the other person.
This is the external manual alarm being pressed. You didn't feel any internal conflict about your choice, say, staying home to rest until the other person applied the pressure.
I was totally fine until my phone buzzed.
Exactly. The reaction they're having, acting as though you betrayed them, is massively inflated compared to the reality of the situation.
And the only accepted apology in their eyes is total submission to their demand.
Correct.
To make this incredibly practical, there's a literal litmus test you can use. 2 questions you can ask yourself in the moment when you feel the fog rolling in.
Listeners, if you take nothing else away from this deep dive, memorize these 2 questions.
The first question, would I feel guilty about this if nobody else was reacting?
That question powerfully isolates the source of the emotion.
How so?
If you imagine the scenario in a vacuum, with no heavy sighs, no accusations of selfishness, and no passive-aggressive texts, would your own moral compass be bothering you?
If the answer is no,
Then the guilt is almost certainly being manufactured by the other person's reaction, not your own action.
and the second question, does the guilt go away when I do the right thing or only when I do what this person wants?
This tests the ultimate goal of the interaction. Healthy guilt is resolved by acknowledgement and a sincere attempt to repair the bond.
But with a guilt trip,
If you apologize for a misunderstanding, but the other person continues to punish you, continues to withhold affection, and continues to apply guilt until you completely change your decision and give them exactly what they demanded,
then they aren't looking for repair.
they are looking for control.
So what does this all mean? The summary here is profound. If the feeling of guilt only disappears upon absolute obedience, it's not a conscience, it's conditioning.
I enthusiastically agree with that assessment. It is a brilliant, clarifying distinction.
Conscience versus conditioning.
Conscience guides you toward moral balance and social harmony. Conditioning is a Pavlovian response designed to train you to behave in a way that serves the trainer.
That is so freeing to realize.
Realizing that you are being conditioned, rather than acting out of your own free conscience, is the first major step toward reclaiming your autonomy.
Which brings us to the action plan. Moving from diagnosis to treatment, we need to arm you, the listener, with how to fight back.
It's time for the defense strategies.
We know what it is, we know the biology of how it works, we know how to spot it, but when someone is actually staring at you, sighing, how do we dismantle the trap in real time?
The psychological experts give us 5 science-backed strategies to break the guilt trap.
5 strategies. Let's get into it.
These strategies are specifically designed to disrupt the cognitive fog we discussed earlier. They help bring your prefrontal cortex, your logical brain, back online when your emotional brain is completely overwhelmed by the manufactured alarm.
Strategy number 1. Name it. Instead of spiraling into, oh my gosh, I'm a horrible person, I need to fix this, the experts suggest shifting your internal monologue to simply, this is guilt tripping. I am being guilt tripped right now.
It seems simple, but it's powerful
Why is that act of labeling so effective?
because it creates immediate psychological distance. When you are caught in the emotion, you are merged with it. You are the panic.
The fog is everything.
Right? But by labeling the tactic, this is a guilt trip, you step outside of the emotion and become an objective observer of the dynamic. You are identifying the play being run against you.
So you're becoming a spectator of your own argument.
Yes. That simple act of naming it lifts the initial layer of the FOG. It shifts your brain from feeling the pain to analyzing the data.
Okay, so naming it gets my brain out of the immediate visceral panic. But the other person is still standing there, still sighing, still looking disappointed. What actually neutralizes their argument in my own head?
That brings us to strategy number 2.
Strategy number 2. Check the facts. The prompt here is to ask, did I actually do something wrong by my values, not theirs? And is the reaction proportionate to what happened?
This is the logical follow-up to naming it. Once you have a moment of cognitive distance, you run to the differential diagnosis we just discussed.
You're looking for the difference between manufactured guilt and earned guilt.
Exactly. If you establish logically that your boundary was reasonable, for example, you cannot afford to lend them money, and their reaction is wildly disproportionate, you solidify the understanding that the guilt is manufactured. You anchor yourself in reality.
Strategy number 3. This one feels like an absolute superpower if you can master it. Separate emotion from obligation.
This is my favorite one.
The psychological consensus is that you are allowed to feel bad and still say no. You can think to yourself, I feel immensely guilty right now. That feeling is very real in my body, but it doesn't automatically mean I owe them compliance.
This is perhaps the most liberating, paradigm-shifting concept we can discuss today.
Because we think feelings are commands.
Exactly. We often operate under the false assumption that if we feel guilty, we must have done something wrong, and therefore we must fix it. But feelings are not facts.
They're just physical sensations.
The feeling of guilt might be very real in your body. Your heart is racing, your stomach is tight, your cortisol is high. But that physical sensation does not dictate your action.
You can just let it sit there.
You can acknowledge the presence of the feeling without letting it drive the car. You can sit with the intense discomfort of the guilt, allow it to just be there, and still maintain your boundary.
That is so incredibly hard to do, but so powerful. Just saying, yes, I feel terrible right now. My body's screaming at me to fix it, but the answer is still no. That keeps your decision-making from being completely hijacked by your biology.
It takes practice. That changes everything.
Okay, strategy number 4. Use neutral, boundary-based responses. The experts give us actual therapist-approved scripts here.
Things you can actually say out loud.
Right. Things like, I hear that you're disappointed. My decision is still the same. Or, I understand you feel hurt, but I'm not going to be able to do that.
Or, referring back to the past favors tactic.
Yeah.
I deeply appreciate what you've done for me in the past. That doesn't mean I can say yes to this today.
And the rules for these scripts are very strict. Short. Calm. No over-explaining.
No over-explaining is the hardest rule for most people.
It really is, because my instinct is always to explain exactly why I can't do the thing, to prove my logic. Like, here's my schedule, look at how tired I am.
Which is a trap, because over-explaining is a symptom of the guilt itself.
Wait, really?
Yes. When you over-explain, you are subtly asking for their permission to have your boundary. You are hoping they will understand your logic and release you from the guilt.
Oh, wow. I'm asking for permission.
But you are actually handing them ammunition. A guilt tripper doesn't care about your logic. They will take your long, detailed explanation, find a perceived flaw in it, and use it to re-engage the guilt trip.
Like, oh, you're not working until 5, you're working until 4, so you can come over.
Exactly. By keeping the response short, calm, and neutral, you offer absolutely no foothold for further manipulation.
You just shut the door.
You acknowledge their feeling, I hear you were disappointed, which shows empathy, but you firmly separate it from your action. My decision is still the same. It shuts down the negotiation entirely.
I hear you're disappointed. My decision is still the same. It's like a gentle brick wall. You can't argue with a brick wall.
Nope.
Finally, strategy number 5. Watch who feels responsible for whose emotions. This is about emotional ownership.
A very crucial concept.
I've heard this described in pop psychology as an emotional backpack where you carry everyone else's feelings. But honestly, that metaphor feels a bit tired to me. It doesn't really explain the mechanics of it. Let's try to find a better way to picture this.
Well, a much more accurate analogy for emotional ownership in a guilt trip dynamic is a virus.
A virus? Tell me more.
Think of the guilt tripper's negative emotion, their disappointment, their anger, their insecurity as a contagion. They are coughing their negative emotions into the shared air of the relationship.
Okay, that's a vivid image.
A healthy dynamic operates on the principle of an emotional immune system. I am responsible for how I behave. You are responsible for how you behave. and for soothing your own negative emotions.
We both wear our masks, so to speak.
Exactly. But when you accept a guilt trip, you are willingly dropping your own immune system. You are letting their emotional virus infect you so that you get sick with them simply
Mhm.
because they demand it.
Wow, yes. They are coughing their negative emotions onto you, and the guilt trip is saying, you are responsible for my sickness.
The dynamic flips entirely.
It says, you are responsible for how I feel, and you must cure me.
Exactly. And the crucial takeaway is that you can care deeply about someone's emotions. You can hand them a tissue. You can offer sympathy for their cold without taking ownership of the virus.
Without getting sick yourself.
Right. Empathy means understanding their pain. Ownership means believing it is your mandatory job to fix it at the expense of your own health.
This whole deep dive really highlights that boundaries and empathy can and must coexist. It is so exhausting to walk through life feeling like it is your job to cure everyone around you, to keep everyone perfectly content and never disappointed.
They are absolutely not mutually exclusive. In fact, true sustainable empathy requires strong boundaries.
If you don't have them, you just burn out.
If you continually absorb everyone else's emotional viruses, your empathy just turns into compliance, exhaustion, and eventually deep resentment.
So to bring this all together and summarize the core journey we've been on today, guilt in its pure evolutionary form is not the enemy.
Not at all.
It is just an internal signal, a way your mind says, hey, you hurt someone in the tribe, you broke your own values, go fix it. It's a sign that you are a good, pro-social human being.
It's the check engine light.
Exactly. The real issue, the danger, starts when other people figure out how to manually press that biological button to control you. They use a powerful pro-social emotion, trigger it from the outside, and aim it so that they benefit from your self-sacrifice.
The hijack.
And they dress it up in noble words. They call it love or loyalty or being a committed team player.
And recognizing that disguise, seeing the manual trigger for what it is the ultimate, most powerful defense.
Absolutely. So to you, the listener, if you are driving right now or standing in your kitchen dreading the next phone call, hear this clearly. You are allowed to be kind without being controlled.
You are allowed to care without catching everyone else's emotional virus.
Your boundaries are valid even if someone else decides to sigh heavily about them.
Let them sigh.
Let them sigh. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with a final, slightly provocative thought to mull over. Something that builds on everything we've talked about today.
Oh, turning the mirror around.
Exactly. We've spent this entire deep dive looking at how to spot the fog, how to diagnose the manipulation, and how to protect yourself when you are the target of a guilt trip.
A defense.
But because this tactic is so deeply ingrained in our society, and because it mimics our own moral compass so perfectly, how often do we unconsciously use these exact same moves?
That's a tough question to ask yourself.
When you are exhausted, when you are stressed, do you ever let out a heavy sigh when your partner says no? Do you ever remind a friend of a past favor when you need help?
We've all done it.
How often do we use these tactics on our kids, our friends, or our partners just because it's the fastest, path of least resistance way to get them to do what we want?
That is the incredibly uncomfortable truth of human behavior. We are all susceptible to using the psychological tools that work, even the manipulative ones, if we aren't paying close attention to our own conduct.
It's something to deeply consider the next time you're tempted to let out a dramatic sigh when someone tells you no.
A little self-reflection goes a long way.
It really does. If this deep dive gave you language for something you've been feeling for years, if it helped clear some of that cognitive fog, share it with someone in your life who constantly says, I feel guilty all the time and I don't know why. Thank you for joining us as we unpack the hidden science of guilt tripping. We will see you on the next deep dive.